You're not a bad person because you eat store-bought bread or use packaged protein powder or can't harvest your own
Can you imagine
chickens.
if we had to eat like that? I would die. Like I just couldn't keep up with that. That sounds exhausting.
Yeah. It's not reasonable from a time or financial domain for most of us.
Yep.
And whole foods are great. Yeah. But demonizing anything with a label, like it's not helpful. And that is not evidence-based.
Hello and welcome back to the How To Fitness podcast with me, Michael Ujoa.
And me, Kate Lyman.
And we're back with a Kate Lyman deep dive today. Kate, what are we talking about?
No. We have news first.
Do we have news?
What has happened in your life, Michael, in the last month?
Have we spoken about the baby being here yet or not?
No,
I can't. Oh. This is quite big news. Okay. I kind of forget time frames of when we recorded, Kate. I think it's also the sleep deprivation. The sleep deprivation has kicked in. But yes, we should probably briefly touch on the fact that I have another child.
You do. Yeah. You have another child. I think because we have it recorded in about a month because you had a child. And I think the last we recorded was like a week before.
I really hope Emma doesn't listen to this episode because she's going to be like, how have you forgotten to speak about that? Yeah, we've now have 2 children, and do you know what? The baby has been amazing. His name is Javi, so we went Spanish with the name.
Cute.
And he's actually a bit of a dream. Like he is like sleeping and eating. That's his deal at the moment, and he seems really content to do that.
And Jude,
although he's taken to being a big brother really, really well, like honestly, it's been the best introduction we could have ever dreamt of. He is obsessed with the baby in a good way, but his sleep has just gone to poo, to put it politely. And I think it's been the worst, like nearly a month old, maybe it's been like the worst month of sleep I've ever had by like a long way. It's been pretty awful.
That just means so much coming from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It means so much.
I know my baseline of good sleep now is completely thrown off, but even by like my bad baseline, we've had some pretty bad sleep. So what's happening is Emma is breastfeeding, so she deals with the baby at nighttime. I deal with Jude. I thought when we came up with this plan that I'd have it easier, but no, I have had a pretty awful time. But other than that, we're doing great. Honestly, we're in really good spirits and we're all very happy. So
I do feel like I've talked to Emma a little bit. I feel like you guys are doing well, and I'm proud of you.
Yeah, we're really fortunate in Scotland. We get so much support. We have like midwives come out to visit you for the first 7 days or so, like multiple times, and then you have the health visitors that come out. So we've had like 6 or 7 visits already, and his weight is shooting up. He's feeding really well. He's doing great.
Yay, Javi. And his name is so cute. I'm obsessed with it.
Thank you. I really love it as well. I do feel like maybe we've been a bit mean to him because living in Scotland, no one's going to be able to pronounce it. Every time someone asks me, I want to take the baby out, they're like, oh, what's his name? I have to say it like 5 times. And then I have to explain the name. Yeah, it's he's got a life of that ahead of him, I'm afraid. But I like it. I think it sounds good. Yeah.
I did the same to our kid living in Mexico, so they get over it.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, shall we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because you know it's me. We have a lot to talk about.
That is very true. I always like Kate's deep dive. She does a lot of research. You've been in the studio. That sounds very professional, doesn't it? You've been in the studio since 5:30 this morning. You messaged me saying that you were finishing up today's script. So
yeah,
Kate's worked hard.
I made the decision to go out with friends last night on a Wednesday night instead of finishing my script, which was the right decision. But not for sleep, but for fun. So, sometimes we sacrifice.
I have absolutely nothing but respect for that decision, Kate.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah.
Okay,
I want to quiz you on something first. Have you heard this? I'm going to quote it off in the culty way I know. Eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch and no sugar. Keep intake to levels that will support exercise, but not body fat.
Wow, I haven't.
Have you heard that?
No, I actually haven't.
That is like CrossFit. CrossFit has this mantra that's fitness in 100 words. Or is it health in 100 words? I think it's fitness in 100 words. Mm-hmm. And that's like the first half of it, of their fitness in 100 words. And
it's giving me slight cult vibes, if I'm honest with you, Kate.
It is giving cult vibes. And if you've listened to our podcast, I have a background in CrossFit. I worked in CrossFit for 10 years. It's kind of my intro into fitness, and I have no beef with it. I had a good time in CrossFit for the most part. Mm-hmm. For the most part, like nothing's I stayed free of like full indoctrination, I think, even working in the space. But that's just my experience, and not everyone's. And Michael loves to make fun of me for my CrossFit background, which when I rattle off this that's memorized and lives so deep inside me,
it's justified.
Fair.
Yeah.
It's justified.
Yeah.
So
I also just want to highlight, I only rib CrossFit because it's kind of fun to rib people out of CrossFit. I actually have no issue with it. Like if maybe
I love to rip on CrossFit.
Yeah, maybe there's some things that does require a little bit of criticism, but it's movement. If people like it, crack on. Like I genuinely
agree.
Deep down, like go for it. I'm happy for you.
I agree. And the reason I pull that from the depths of my knowledge is because I was very much a victim to paleo. And we're not going to talk about paleo much today, but we are going to talk about ancestral diets. And my take is that ancestral diets have evolved quite far from like 10 years ago paleo. And it's something now that we see everywhere on social media, ancestral eating. And sometimes it looks like this full on carnivore raw liver, or like a different manifestation of the paleo craze. Either way, there is an obsession with eating like our ancestors. Michael, you're on socials so much more than me. Do you see this constantly?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I've done a lot of kind of call out videos on the nonsense that a lot of these people spread. And it's, it's really difficult. So there's maybe like 10 or so really prominent figures that are championing this movement because financially for them it's probably very profitable to do so. But yeah, it's because you always feel a bit bad. Like you're doing call out videos because we have to call out the misinformation. I think it's important. But when it's like the same people over and over again, it's like, how are these people building huge followings? I don't quite understand it. It's wild. Yeah,
we're going to talk about some of them. And here's the thing, like on the surface, I do think it sounds kind of wholesome. Like, let's go back to the basics. Let's eat like our ancestors did before industrialization ruined food. Like I get the allure of that. I do. You won't catch me or yourself like saying our current Western diet is great. Like that's not it. But here's the thing. This narrative is just wildly oversimplified and it's sometimes rooted in misinformation and it is almost always lacking nuance. So we're going on a deep dive.
Yeah, I think we're gonna do it. It's the same with all of these groups, isn't it? Right? They add like a sprinkle of like common sense or maybe like a little bit of evidence based too sometimes that kind of lures people in and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty legit. And then they kind of pull the wool over your eyes with all the other nonsense they spread with it. Precisely.
So today we're going to talk a bit about ancestral diets, what they actually are, what our ancestors really ate. Spoiler alert, it wasn't steak, guys.
But was it paleo ice cream? Because I think that's definitely what they ate.
And we're going to talk a little bit about preservatives and additives and how they fit into the picture, because that was something that felt really important to me in navigating this topic, and why we can't talk about food without acknowledging our modern food environment. So here we go. Some science, some history, some context. Like always, non-dogmatic approach. That's who we are. And I have to start by saying, I got to be honest, I don't really know how to describe an ancestral diet. There are so many interpretations of it. There is not a single definition. There is no one ancestral diet. And I went on TikTok so that you don't have to.
Did you go on TikTok? You never go on TikTok, Kate.
Well, because we have our How to Fitness TikTok. So I had to. If you get on there, the algorithm is screwed. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It's really funny because I've been thinking about this with you uploading our TikTok stuff. I'm like, I wonder how Kate's feeling about being on this platform. I hope that she's okay. Yeah, okay. I thought you'd say that. Yeah.
I don't love it. And so I went to TikTok so you don't have to. And here are some of the things I saw explained as an ancestral diet. Eating organic, eating raw organ meat, eating raw milk, eating local and in season, growing your own food, no starches, grass-fed meat only, no dyes or additives, no vegetables, only fruit, no fruit, only starchy vegetables, or non-starchy vegetables. So much sourdough. Like so much sourdough. Mm-hmm. And I've also seen it mean this like paleo-esque low carb, high meat approach, or carnivore, or a push to eat like your specific ancestors. So like I would say I'm making up my own definitions here more or less with the information I've gathered, because I don't feel like there is a definition, but paleo feels very much like let's all eat like our ancestors in this broad like Paleolithic way. And I think the ancestral way has transitioned a little more to like eat like your specific ancestors. Which, what is that? A Spanish British guy for you?
Yeah.
What about me? I don't even know. I don't know half of my paternity, so like I can't even tell you. But all that to say, it looks like a million different things, and there's not a lot of consistency in what ancestral even means. So let me play you a clip. Are you ready?
I'm excited. I don't think we've ever played a clip on the podcast before. This feels like a huge
time.
step forward in our technological
technology.
Welcome to a day of what I typically eat, focusing on ancestral high-protein foods. To start the day, I have lemon water with salt to replenish minerals and stay hydrated. Then for breakfast, I made my favorite sourdough buttermilk pancakes, and I had them with eggs, ground beef, and bacon. You know, we always got to have our protein. I really just love this breakfast. And then for lunch, I made soup with my favorite kettle and fire bone broth. It's 100% grass-fed, a high-protein source, and so good for your gut. It's on sale right now at Whole Foods, so be sure to stock up. A little afternoon snack of raw cheese, sliced apples, my favorite beef stick, and some dark chocolate. For dinner, I made a bolognese with Oregon blend meat, some fresh raw cream, and I always love to add some bone broth as well. I served it with our favorite local pasta, some freshly grated raw Parmesan, homemade sourdough garlic bread, and a simple little salad. And finally, for dessert, I made sourdough brownies with homemade vanilla ice cream to finish off the day.
I have two comments. Okay, two comments first. First, how wealthy is this woman? Because this sounds incredibly expensive. Second of all, her diet isn't filling her with joy, is it? She sounds miserable.
She does sound miserable, although her food sounds good, actually. If we can move past the vocal fry,
okay, thank
right?
You. Yep.
I'm
glad you did that. I really wanted to, and I didn't.
So you're not allowed to. Yeah. So much sourdough, and I would say that sounds like a diet that is filled with a lot of nice whole foods, not too much ultra processed foods. Sounds healthful. Sounds pretty well rounded. Our ancestors weren't eating pancakes or sourdough brownies or pasta, right? So, okay, I picked that one clip because I saw like 10,000 iterations of it. Yeah. And some were so much worse, but it's almost like I can't bring it. It's not in me to share their voices. Like I couldn't even. This is like a pretty normal one. So another question for us as we think about ancestral diets. Which ancestors? Where were they located? What was their climate? Because in all of this reading I did, I saw that it means to eat ancestrally means eat from the Stone Age. Okay. I don't know what that is. Eat from what your ancestors ate 500 years ago, specifically 500 years ago. And like everything in between, and the idea that all of our ancestors were eating the same thing, like some perfect meat heavy carb free sugarless diet, just it doesn't hold up. And so we see that anthropologists and archaeologists and evolutionary biologists all have shown that human diets were so diverse depending on geography and season and availability and survival needs. And when it comes to this idea of what feels very prominent right now, like eat where your ancestors came from, I think it's important to acknowledge there are genetic adaptations depending on where you're from, right? Like we see it in peoples who are more prone to lactose tolerance versus intolerance. But this is going to be more individual than ancestral. And actually now I'm thinking of you, Michael, European. You should be a milk drinker, but you are lactose intolerant. So
what's gone wrong there? What's going on?
What happened? And the last consideration I want to make here is just as we're asking ourselves questions is, what is the goal of this ancestral eating? Because again, in consuming way too much information, I saw it being gut health, longevity, general health, weight loss, reprogramming your genes, looking better, performing better, right? Like what's the point? Because I saw it be a million different things, right? And I want to loop back briefly to my paleo days. And this is just my experience. And I know it's the experience for some others or similar. And I know not everyone had a negative experience, right? But I think of what paleo taught me as I was trying to eat the paleo way, like my caveman ancestors, it taught me to be very afraid of carbs, even though I was eating sweet potatoes and dates. Like I was eating a lot of carbs. It taught me to eat way more meat than I needed. It taught me to feel like food was out to get me. Like I think of my prime paleo days were like end of high school and through college, and the social anxiety I felt around like the idea of a pizza party, or this feeling that like the world and the food system was out to get me and I was just alone trying to do it right. Like not everyone has this experience and it's fine, but we have these diets like paleo that are built on this idea that agricultural revolution is terrible and all of our problems would be solved if we were still hunter-gatherers, and if we can achieve this like old way, we'll be healthier and live longer. And the hyper masculine imagery meat and hunting and jacked guys with steaks that accompanies this is like so uncomfortable when we take a step back and look at it, right?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I also, the first thing that springs to mind as well when you start talking about that, about like living longer, and like why are we wanting to look at ancestral diets when I'm pretty sure the life expectancy during the times that people are trying to pinpoint and focus on was nowhere near what, I know there's so much nuance around why life expectancy is what it is, but it does feel a little bit bizarre on that front.
Right. I mean, there's a reality that those Paleolithic ancestors didn't live long enough to develop the chronic disease that we now experience.
Exactly.
I'm not saying our food system doesn't play a role, because it totally does, but we didn't get there. We didn't get that far, right? So, there's so many ways to take this episode, and I didn't want to take it into, well, here's what our ancestors actually eat. But I do want to talk about that briefly, because I think there's a little myth busting to be done. So humans did evolve to eat meat, but we're also wired for plant consumption. And that's important, especially in the face of this carnivore craze. We see this in our longer GI tract, in the way our teeth are. Like, we don't have carnivore's teeth. We don't have like the big canines like a tiger or whatever. And trichromatic vision, which means we can see red and green, which helps with gathering, where carnivores can't. Wait, can you see red and green, Michael?
Those are the colors I struggle with. I would have been a rubbish. Absolutely rubbish.
You're meant to be a carnivore. That's your ancestral way.
I can't eat milk. I can't see red and green properly. I just wouldn't have been a long living creature back in kind of whenever these people are talking about.
Funny.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that you're our case study for this.
Yeah.
So we also see this in the expansion of our amylase genes. And this is the gene expressed in the small intestine by the pancreas. And we express it in saliva. And this salivary amylase is designed for digesting starch, and like multiple times across history we see that we've expanded this ability to digest starch and dairy. When you look at preserved fecal specimens from these ancestors, they're so fibrous. I looked at so many pictures of this like preserved poop. It's just like fiber. It looks like a bird's poop or something. I don't know. So, there's this myth that Paleolithic people or hunter-gatherer ancestors didn't eat whole grains and legumes, but there's big evidence of plant consumption predating agriculture, right? Starch granules from tubers and grains are found in dental calculus, and it's very interesting that like analyzing teeth is how we know a lot of this, which is pretty cool. And there's a wide variety of plants and tubers and barley and fruits and whatever eaten by those ancestors. So, it just doesn't hold up that we were just eating meat. And if we're talking about this broad ancestral way of eating, this idea in this culture that grains, legumes, and starchy vegetables are like modern inventions that we can't handle, it's not what the fossil record shows. There's stone tools with starch granules on them that show, or suggest rather, that humans were eating grains and roots more than 100,000 years ago. So like so long. Before agriculture, because so much of this conversation is like anti-agriculture, like everything changed with the agricultural revolution. So
I love that.
I don't know. That remains frustrating, but I think the real takeaway here is our ancestors were resourceful and their diets were built for survival, and not optimization. Right? They weren't out here optimizing for performance like we're trying to do. No matter how many reels you see of people gnawing on raw liver, like reality was so much more complex than that, and a lot of times more plant forward. than today's like TikTok version of ancestral eating. I think there's a really easy takeaway here that, yeah, ancestral eating is like a little goofy, but yes, eating more whole foods is good. So let's just ignore the silly parts and just eat more whole foods. Like we deserve to talk more about that, but let's just acknowledge that that remains true too. Like there is some good stuff here. The value of eating fewer ultra processed foods or connecting more with where our food comes from, I give it a thumbs up. That's great. But pretending there was like this one perfect caveman diet that we strayed from is, it's not science, it's marketing.
No, I was just going to say, are we surprised there? Yeah, it's just
No,
a lot
we're not
of
surprised.
influencers hiding behind one buzzword and spinning it in whichever way they want to in order to sell the supplements they want to sell. Yeah.
Precisely. And so on that note, Michael, we got to talk about some of the players here.
Let's do it.
Right? Like
Yes.
I know you mentioned like there's a few, and here's the thing. When I prep for an episode, I read a lot of the literature. I read a lot of like Nat Geo, or just like typical like science magazines or Scientific American or whatever. And then I also go on Reddit because I always want to see what people are saying on Reddit about the topics, right? And I spent a lot of time on TikTok for this one. And there are two main sources, I think, that a lot of people come back to in this conversation. Weston A. Price and Paul Saladino, and we're going to talk about them, but we're going to spend more time talking about Weston A. Price because I'm baffled by this. Do you know that name?
No.
Are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay, gear up.
Okay.
So Weston A. Price, holy crap, does this man have a following? I didn't know much about him. I actually realized that I know the name of his book, but I didn't know about him. Price was a dentist. He was born in the late 1800s. He was a dentist. And in the early 1900s, he traveled around the world photographing people's teeth. He was a dentist and he did all this work on teeth. And he believed that the rise in tooth decay and jaw deformities and chronic illness in Western population was due to modern diets, which is kind of fair. Like like a lot of that tracks, but specifically the introduction of white flour and sugar and processed foods. And he wrote this book in 1939 called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And it has become this like sacred text for ancestral eating enthusiasts. And here's the thing. I don't know what's in the book. I have not read the book. I added it to my TBR list, like to my read it list, because I'm so fascinated with what people are saying about this book.
I was going to say, brace yourself if you're about to read it, if these people are using it as a Bible. Like, geez.
So here's the thing. Weston A. Price, he had some interesting observations in his work. He did find these stark differences in dental health with people, between people with traditional diets and those exposed to the more processed Western foods. And that feels fair. But here's where it gets a little weird. He claimed that these traditional diets led to broader jaws and more symmetrical faces and more attractive people. And so it's like, it feels like we're kind of veering into this like eugenics adjacent territory, and I'm not very comfortable there.
That really does, yeah.
And his research was super anecdotal, like not very robust.
What a surprise.
Yeah, what a surprise. It was like observational, and he ignored this really important part. He was observing their child mortality and their death from disease later on. Like he was really just looking at the healthy people and their teeth. So I think people really love this book. I don't know what's in it. I will read it. I will report back. But apparently there's some good stuff in there. But it gets weird. And then it's like, okay, well, we've got red flags here. So if we fast forward to today, the real problem is the Weston A. Price Foundation, which was created after he was dead. They like took from him and made this foundation. And it's run by this woman, Sally Fallon, and it takes his legacy and it runs with it like straight off a cliff. So this Weston A. Price Foundation has a massive following, and they claim to follow the science, but they also promote raw milk. They're like one of the loudest raw milk activist groups out there. And they specifically promote homemade raw milk baby formula, which makes me want to scream. They have a ton of anti-vax. I just don't know that it is, right? A ton of anti-vax rhetoric, very anti-fluoride, very anti-pasteurization, very anti-seed oil. And they promote this rigid, high-fat, animal product-heavy diet that's like so pro-saturated fat. It's wild. They like part of their dietary recommendations are to double the sodium intake that is like in normal dietary recommendations, and to eat more saturated fat, because they say the correlation between saturated fat and heart disease is not there. And it's like, these are all things that fly in the face of heart disease literally being the number one cause of death in the US. So they're very like denounce modern nutritional science, and they mock researchers who challenge these views, and they reject decades of peer-reviewed research on heart disease and saturated fat. So
how many of them are now like on Trump's board of health? Like, is this the next step they're about to go to?
I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
For example, they claim that there is no difference in heart disease risk between someone with a cholesterol level of 180 versus 300.
Jesus. Okay.
It's like this is like out of line with everything we know in population-based studies. And what's even more ironic is Weston A. Price in his work actually observed a lot of healthy vegetarian and pescatarian populations in his travels. But the current foundation is, Michael, you have to go to their website. It's a wild, wild place. They are so anti-vegetarian. Like, there's a place on the website where you go if you're a vegetarian, where they try to talk you out of it. Like, you're spiritually weak, you're nutritionally inferior, it's a moral failing. Like, it's so like you're with us or you're wrong. And they're basically the foundation now is out to push these ancestral ways of eating. They call it like wise and traditional food. Again, if you go to their website, like, they have this whole page about what their logo means, and it has like, it's all about the broad face. Like, let's make everybody's face broad and healthy and aesthetic again. It's so weird. And I'm not just like calling out one obscure thing. So many of these proponents of ancestral eating come back to this man who now is this foundation spreading this nonsense. I don't know that he would have liked that. I don't know. But he also was kind of questionable. So there's that. And I think it's something to be aware of. Second, I think you know who I'm going to talk about. It's Mr. Paul Saladino, aka Carnivore MD.
Yeah, this guy.
I think you know more about him than I do. So tell us a little bit about Paul Saladino.
I also, do you know the one thing I do love about Paul Saladino is that he has the word salad in his name, and he's really against salad, and it's just fantastic. I've done a lot of videos calling out a lot of the misinformation that this guy spreads, because it is completely misinformation. Like, he makes a lot of unsubstantiated health claims that are not backed by research. He was like the main driver, if not still one of the main drivers of like carnivore or even just like animal-based eating. But now he's actually started eating plant-based products again because his health was suffering. So like, this guy that was the big champion of like, don't eat any fruits and vegetables, they're all really bad for you, is now like consuming some of them because his health was suffering. So it just automatically, how he hasn't been cancelled for absolute nonsense, I have no idea. And then I guess it's just like promoting things like raw milk, and the supplements conveniently that he sells are in line with his wacko approach to nutrition. And it's just one of these people that's just had such a problematic impact on the fitness and nutrition industry. It's really hard for us to be able to see the industry going back to normal after this happening. So it's a pretty prominent figure, and if you could not guess, I'm not a big fan. Yeah.
So I learned he's still anti-veggie. Like, he now eats animal. So he was carnivore, strict carnivore. He had those health issues. He had like muscle cramps, sleep problems, heart palpitations, and his testosterone dropped, which is probably the only thing to bring a hyper-masculine fitness influencer back into the reality. And he like pivoted by adding honey and fruit and raw dairy. So he's still like, vegetables are toxic. So okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't even want to give too much screen time or pod time to Paul Saladino, but a lot of this talk of ancestral eating does kind of come back to him as well. Although he doesn't use that ancestral verbiage as much. He's a lot more about like animal based and whatever, but I think there's a lot of connection there. And so both of these men, Weston A. Price, Paul Salad, have made careers out of selling the idea that nature knows best.
Yeah.
Like,
and the one video of his that upset me the most, sorry to interrupt you, Kate, there was just to kind of highlight to anyone who isn't aware of this guy, was he said not to eat an Oreo because it was incredibly bad for you. Like, who's eating Oreos because they think they're healthy, right? But anyway, he said to eat instead, a good substitute was dates with a bit of cheese in the middle. Was an alternative for an Oreo. And that is insulting to anyone who likes
so
eating
insulting.
Oreos. Yeah, this guy, yeah. I mean, that's not the most dangerous thing he's ever promoted, but it is one of the most stupid. So yeah.
Yeah, that's like actually one of the least dangerous,
Yeah.
but most absurd.
Yeah, it literally is. Yeah. Sorry,
I
please continue. I
think-
interrupted you.
No, I love that piece of knowledge. And honestly, like if I see him up on my feed or whatever, I always swipe by. So I didn't even know much about him. I'm just like, ugh, carnivore guy. And you know, both of these guys have kind of made this career out of selling the idea that, yeah, nature knows best. And in doing so, we are kind of going to twist modern evidence to support our claims. And let's make sure everyone distrusts the system and distrusts the government and distrusts public
Well, he had a
health and
meeting the other day
science
with RFK, right? Like that's
I
how
know.
much power this guy has created for himself through misinformation on social media.
It makes
it's
me
terrifying.
want to smash my head against my desk.
Yeah.
That's the only explanation I have for that. And here is the thing, because we should bring MAHA into this, right? Like it is very easy to romanticize the past or modern food when modern food right now feels overwhelming. That feels really fair. That feels really understandable to me. But if we follow these voices blindly, it doesn't lead to more health. It's like rigidity and confusion and fear, especially when these messages are so much more about identity and ideology than actual evidence. I think of that clip I played. She was just eating food, expensive food, like very privileged food choices. But this was all ideology, wasn't it? This was her identity, more so than her specific food choices, because your ancestors weren't eating pancakes or brownies. They weren't eating pasta. They didn't have boxed bone broth. And I think even their bone broth probably looked much different than what we have now, right? So we can take the helpful parts, the whole foods, the less ultra processed, the understanding cultural food practices, and leave the fear mongering pseudoscience stuff behind and recognize like, this is all about money. There's a very shaky scientific evidence to support any of the things we're talking about. It's like ancestral is just what paleo was 10 years ago, but we got to keep changing things so we make money off of it. Carnivore might kind of be what keto was 10 years ago too.
Probably. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like we're just repackaging diets and diet culture. So obviously, hopefully this goes without saying, I'm not anti-eat more whole foods. That's exactly what I think we should be doing. We should eat more fiber. We should get in lean protein. We should include healthy fats, yada, yada. Eat more minimally processed foods, not because it's trendy, but because that's what helps with satiety and energy and digestion, overall health. But just going into this, like making that be something that's called ancestral ignores the nuance and access. And you brought this up earlier, Michael, but our ancestors, they didn't live long enough to experience this full realm of chronic disease that we live with today. And the average life expectancy of most human history is like 30, 40 tops. Like they weren't dying of heart disease or cancer because they weren't living long enough to get there. And I also feel like we missed the point that optimizing over time, like evolutionary, we weren't optimizing for longevity, right? Evolutionarily, I think we're just optimizing to reproduce. Isn't that right? It's like be healthy through your 20s. If that, like mid-teens? I don't know. Reproductive age is so early then, right? Be optimized through your reproduction and then like keep the race going. We don't care about you later. You're not trying to live to 80, right? Second, I think it's really important to bring up that a lot of what we call whole foods today are just not at all the same things we ate 10,000 years ago. We have selectively bred and hybridized and cultivated crops and livestock to be more calorie dense and less bitter and more shelf stable. And like our ancestors weren't eating bananas like we know them now. We have bred bananas to be edible.
Yeah.
They weren't. Have you seen those pictures of like the real banana?
Yeah,
like all seeds?
I have. And this is one of those things that always really, really fascinates me with these people, because they will criticize the way that we have adapted crop use over the last however many centuries or thousands of years, but they'll never acknowledge the fact that we've done the same with animals that they're saying are incredible for us to eat. Like,
Right?
like we've put as much time and effort into creating the perfect animals for human consumption as we have crop use, but that never seems to get spoken about or criticized. And it's just
That's
really
so
bizarre.
true. Right. Like eggs, chicken eggs as we know them now. This is not the same thing as chicken eggs then.
Yeah.
Like the rate of egg production, the size of the eggs.
Like how
you know,
like breeding cattle that are great for producing milk, or they're the best, like the tastiest to eat. It's like this. It just doesn't make sense when you actually look at the entire picture.
It doesn't. And like, we've bred lettuce leaves to no longer be unpalatable and bitter. Maybe that's what Paul Saladino thinks. He's like, long ago they were toxic, because that was like forever that was true. Or the blueberries and avocado and eggs that we're eating, if we're paleo ancestral, like it's just adapted to be edible. In researching this episode, here's one thing I learned. Broccoli is very recent in its current form. It's a cultivated version of wild mustard. I didn't know that.
I did not know that either.
And if you look at like the wild broccoli, it just looks like a weed. And now we have this like big flowery broccoli trees that we eat. It's really wild.
I really like broccoli. I know this is slightly off track here, but I'm a big fan of broccoli.
I love broccoli.
Unless you cook it for too long, then it's a bit gross.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah.
It's like the only thing my toddler eats that's green, so I love it. So, going back to this idea of like pure, untouched food, like it's not accurate. We've always modified food. It's just we do it differently now.
Sure.
And like this romanticization of the past is just it's so harmful, and it can make people feel like they're failing if they rely on convenience foods, or they're toxic if they eat something out of a box. And like, let's bring it back to our girly pop on the TikTok that I shared. Like, most people don't have their own time, the time and resources to do all the things she did. And Michael, the ones I didn't share with you, oh my gosh.
I've seen
she was
some
like
of them before.
harvesting her own herbs and grinding her own flour and raising her own chicken. It's like, you're not a bad person because you eat store-bought bread or use packaged protein powder or can't harvest your own
Can you imagine
chickens.
if we had to eat like that? I would die. Like, I just couldn't keep up with that. That sounds exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like it's not reasonable from a time or financial domain for most of us.
Yeah.
And Whole Foods are great. Yeah, I've said it a million times in this episode, but demonizing anything with a label, like, it's not helpful. And that is not evidence-based. That is not evidence-based. So on that note, I want to talk about additives and preservatives, like these so-called villains of modern food. And this is where a lot of that ancestral eating crowd gets especially loud. The other clip I didn't share, she's like, I'm an ancestral-based eater feeding a family of whatever, 5, and in a seed-free, additive-free, dye-free, paraben-free home, or whatever it was.
I'm laughing, but I'm actually like, if you
Crying?
really analyze that, I feel really sorry for them, right? Because clearly this is incredibly disordered. Like that is
your kids are not going to grow up with a healthful relationship
exactly.
with food.
And I just feel like that's creeping into like the eating disorder realm of like having that much control and worry about the things that you're consuming and the things that you're doing is actually really sad. I feel really sorry for them. I actually feel that sometimes when I do call out videos, you have to be really careful about like which videos you're choosing in terms of who you're selecting to kind of analyze and use them as educational purposes, because these people are clearly not in a good way. So you don't then want to cause a pile on by people criticizing the way that they're doing things. It's it's really, really horrible. It's really horrible.
I made Kenny watch a video that was ancestral baby-led weaning. And I thought, you are literally setting your kid up from infancy to have a skewed relationship with food that is not going to serve them for their life.
It's same with that.
That's really upsetting.
Bobby Approves idiot guy on social media. I'm sure there's some people following.
Flav City.
That bloke. Yeah.
I always mix up him, Paul Saladino. Actually, I'm like, it's just like guys in grocery stores.
Literally, yeah. They create a career out of just shouting at toxins in air quotes in grocery stores. And he's done videos where he's like asking his kid how bad the products are by reading the ingredients on the back of the label. And it's like, this is just not going to end well. And it's worrying because these are the people that we know are doing it, but they now have thousands/millions of people following, doing exactly the same things with their kids. And it's a recipe for disaster.
That makes me so upset. Like raging inside. And yeah, it's like this whole, if it has preservatives, it's poison, or if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. And it sounds so dramatic because it is so dramatic. Like what the drama is insane. Food additives and preservatives are not inherently bad.
Also,
It's
you're
like
just
so many
admitting
things
to
we talk
people
about.
you can't read very well as well. That was always
Yeah,
springs to mind. You know, I'm like, just
Yeah.
tell people you're an idiot. Come on, it's fine.
It brings to mind that RFK Jr.
That's what I
clip
thought
of
of
him,
straight
yeah.
away.
Right. So it's like, I mean, we're in this place culturally, politically, where we're questioning giant leaps in public health, like pasteurization, like vaccination, etc. And preservatives and fortification, which is, you know, food additives, are a huge part of that. Like, so many of these technologies are essential for food safety and shelf life and nutrient preservation and accessibility. And without it, your spinach that you want on your like grass-fed beef salad, whatever, would wilt in a day.
Yep.
And your yogurt would sour in the car ride home, and your favorite canned tuna would kill you. Like that's where we're coming from.
Yeah.
So additives can be the emulsifiers that like keep your nut butter from separating, or the stabilizers in plant milks that make it smooth, or preservatives, that big scary word. Ascorbic acid, literally a form of vitamin C, is what keeps most food from spoiling. And fortifiers, folic acid, vitamin D. We talked about this in your vitamin D episode, right? Like those are massive public health advancements. So, you know, don't get me started on the monoglyceride, diglyceride. So many syllables, can't pronounce it. They're emulsifiers made from fats. Like, let's not be dull here. So the FDA, and I learned it's the EFSA in Europe. Did you know that? That's the version of the FDA. I'm sure you did know that, but I learned it.
I hadn't kind of connected the two of being like similar. Mainly that's just because I view the FDA as slightly problematic now in terms of just
That's
their
fair.
influence. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm never here to I'm never here to defend the FDA, but they do set ADIs, or acceptable dietary intake levels, for foods, and they're so conservative, and they're based on these massively large margins of safety, and you'd have to consume like an unrealistic amount of any single additive to hit those limits. Like you're probably more likely to like eat too much. I don't know. Have you seen the video of I'm off track. People who eat too much cinnamon, they're doing like ancestral whole food, whatever, and they eat too much cinnamon and they get like liver damage because cinnamon in too much quantity can harm the liver. And it's like this idea that natural means safe and processed is harmful, and anything that's unprocessed and natural you can eat unlimited amounts of is baloney.
Yeah. It's almost like the danger is in the dose. Hey, Kate.
Imagine that. Imagine
would've
that. So
thunk it? Yeah.
is it still a good idea to have the bulk of your intake coming from nutrient-dense, minimally processed foods? Yeah, if you have access to them, that's great. And that's not because additives are toxic. It's not because lightly processed foods, you know, have more fiber than ultra processed and whatever, and leave us more satisfied. Like, oh, that's good. But we don't have to pick a side. That is what I want the takeaway to be. You don't have to say, I eat ancestrally and now that's who I am as a person. You could eat more whole foods, and that's great. So this was, we're at 43 minutes. Okay. Give me 5 more minutes. And this is actually the driver of this episode for me. Why I came to wanting to talk about this topic is thinking about our food environment, which has been something on my mind so much lately. So like we've talked about what our ancestors actually ate. We've talked about why modern food isn't the enemy. Problematic, sure, but not the enemy. Like, let's zoom out and talk about context, because we do not give enough thought to the food environment we live in currently. Our ancestors were not surrounded by 24/7 access to food like we are. There was no DoorDash and Costco and gas stations every 6 miles to go to the snack aisle. Like, they ate what they could find and forage and catch, and they spent so much of their time and their whole lifetime doing just that, right? Meanwhile, we're now living in this world where food is engineered to be delicious and convenient and hyper palatable and always available. And you don't have to be, quote, undisciplined to find that challenging. Like, if that feels hard for you to navigate, congratulations, you're human. It's not just about the fact that we have so much access to food. It's that we're bombarded with constant marketing, and we have social and emotional ties to food that probably didn't exist long ago. I think food has always been like celebratory and connection based, right? But stress eating, doubt it was a thing that happened with our cavemen times. Bored eating, same thing, right? And honestly, the decision fatigue we face nowadays when we're making hundreds of food related decisions a day is very impactful. I found this I don't know if it's fun or depressing statistic. I'm not sure. 2023, the average American, U.S. citizen, spent less than an hour a day on food prep and cleanup. Maybe that seems right. But compare that to our ancestors who literally their waking hours were dedicated to obtaining and preparing food. That shift alone, that changes everything. How are we even talking about the same thing? So if you feel like it's hard to eat, I don't want to say perfectly, ideally aligned with your goals in today's world, that's because it is. You're not weak. You're navigating an environment that's literally not built for moderation, right?
It's so true. I have this conversation a lot with my clients actually, where they will ask me oh, why is this so difficult? Why do we have to spend so much time kind of learning about the food that we eat regularly or learning about the food environment? Why? I feel like it's so unique this time now where I believe everyone at some point living today needs to do some element of food education to learn about the food that they're eating. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to calorie count everything that you're consuming, but I just think that we are living in such a bizarre time now where food is constantly around us that we just have to be informed about what we're eating. Otherwise, it's just going to be really, really difficult for us to navigate for the rest of our lives. And I know as humans, we always want to compare. It's in our DNA, right? We always want to compare. So we're oh, why can't we just eat like we did 200, 300 years ago? And it's just not possible anymore. The food environment, the way that our lives are in terms of work, how sedentary we are, just the field is different and the game has completely changed. And I think that's why nutrition education is so important, because even those people that feel they have a really healthy relationship with food and they've always just kind of been able to get away with eating whatever feels right, I think there's going to become a time where you're going to have to be a little bit more aware of what you're consuming. And unless you go through a period of good food education, you're really going to struggle. It's just finding a way to encourage people to do that isn't disordered, and that's the challenge.
Yeah. Can I plug 2 of our episodes, which are the hyperpalatable food episode, which talks about what makes these foods kind of take over our brains and make it hard to stop eating. And I think that does a good job explaining what we're up against. And the food marketing episode, not to just plug my own deep dives. Those are ones I did that kind of plays into I like this topic, right? Let's understand what we're up against so we can make better decisions. So yeah, all of this is why any conversation around food, including this ancestral style eating, has to take into account modern life. Your health habits today aren't meant to work in some fantasy survivalist version of reality. That's not one we're living. We're living one with meetings and kids and deadlines and holidays and processed foods being part of our lives because they're convenient and we need them sometimes. And a body and a brain that is evolved to survive, not for six-pack abs. We're not meant, your healthiest state is not with a six-pack probably. And that goes for Mr. Paul Saladino. So the more that we understand this environment, the more we can build strategies that actually work instead of trying to live like the Ice Age. And you make up a really good point about that, needing to invest in some type of nutrition education instead of just walking around blinders on, because that's hard. And I'm going to tie it up, but what's happening in the US right now, Michael, with the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. There is this real issue with diet nostalgia. And it's comforting to think that there was a time when food was simpler and pure and better. And it's fair to say some things were simpler pre this industrialization and advertising that we're bombarded with. But the idea that there was a perfect past to return to is a fantasy. And when we romanticize the way people used to eat, we're turning food into a moral issue, which is we're not even, this isn't even the point of what we're doing here, right? If you're not buying grass-fed liver, or grinding your own grains, you're doing it wrong. That's not helpful to anyone. And it's shame-based and it promotes this all or nothing mindset, and it just disconnects us from our actual needs. So we can't forget that our ancestors didn't eat to live longer or feel better or manage their blood sugar or gut health. They ate to survive. They didn't have birthday parties or late meetings or fitness goals or mental health struggles. Like they didn't meal prep while managing a full-time job and a toddler. And so let's just be real. A lot of the ancestral dieting marketing is less about health and more about aesthetics and masculinity and this natural dominance. Hi, Liver King. You know, I didn't even want to bring him into this because I just can't stand him. You know, it's not about nutrition. It's about selling an identity. So if you want to build your identity around, you know, I am intentional with my habits. I know what works for my body. I eat without shame. Let's do that. Like, let's not build our identity around raw milk or carnivore. It's let's learn from the past, eat more whole foods where we can, care about quality and nourishment, and like stop pretending there was ever a perfect way to eat, because there wasn't and there isn't. And you can't eat like a caveman right now. Food environment's different. That's that.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, and I use the word intrigued. Maybe it's not the right word because it's sad to think about it in like 3.5, 4 years time, hopefully when Trump's no longer president. We'll look back and be like, oh, everyone's health didn't improve when we removed red 40 dyes from food, you know? Like they're obsessing over these kind of small little details that they think is going to have a massive impact on people's health when it's just not. Because health outcomes are so much more nuanced. There's so many other things that impact it. So I wonder whether that realization moment will ever come for a few people, or whether they'll just move the goalposts and it'll be someone else's fault because we didn't ban enough dyes, you know?
I love your optimism.
I know, right? Always. I try.
like the cynic in me. Actually, I'm not a naturally cynical person, but the place we're in right now in the world and the political climate just kind of, it's hard not to be, right. I think I think the reason nothing good can come from even attempted changes is because if scientific evidence doesn't matter, nothing really matters, right? There's no and we can see that in these ancestral diets, right? It's like we're just blatantly ignoring the science and going with what we believe to be real. Yeah. And so when that's the case, it doesn't matter. It's just he said, she said, right? Yeah.
But yeah, the UK is always very closely behind the US with what you guys do as well, which is terrifying.
So sorry.
Like you have people like Nigel Farage standing up recently talking about kind of wanting to change the way that women can make choices about their own bodies to following the state of the US. And it's just, So although from the UK, we're like, oh, lucky this isn't happening to us here yet. Like it's yet, you know, it's only going to, it's going to happen eventually too. So that's why we have got to keep calling it out, Kate.
Yep. We do what we can. Well, thank you for listening. As always.
You're welcome. Oh, not me. Those guys listening. Okay.
Michael and the listeners. We love having conversations about these topics. I love when we can keep it going outside of the podcast. If you ever have questions, comments, criticisms, suggestions, whatever they may be, if they're criticisms, send them to Michael. Yeah. I don't handle that well. Just kidding.
Support Paul Saladino, then come at me, bro.
Yeah, that's for Michael to take on. Thank you for listening. As always, we appreciate if you give us a review or like or subscribe if you're watching on YouTube.
That's it. Thanks, Kate. You nailed it again, and we'll see you all again soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.